Welcome to Concussion Recovery Diaries. These are notes that I would give to myself if I were recovering from a concussion today. Now, you're probably wondering, well, if I have a concussion, shouldn't I just go see a doctor? Yes, absolutely. Go see a doctor. Make sure that you go to the emergency room if you hit your head and think that you might have gotten a concussion. Now, the reason that I'm also making these videos is because concussion care has evolved a lot in the last 12 to 15 years, and it has evolved so much to the point where what we used to recommend in the healthcare world for concussion recovery is almost completely opposite of what we recommend today. And so, if you happen to be working with a doctor who is not constantly looking at the updated research with concussion, you could easily be given advice that actually stalls your recovery without you even knowing, without this doctor even knowing. The thing about concussions is that it is its own little specialty, but the healthcare world hasn't caught up with that yet. What I mean is that concussion care deserves its own specialty. It deserves its own mini residency, fellowship, or something that different doctors go through in order to see people post concussion. But unfortunately, right now, it's lumped into this bigger category of brain injuries. And so the recommendations aren't going to be as specific for concussion as they should be. I'm Brittany. I'm a doctorate trained physical therapist, and I specialize in seeing people post concussion. I've seen people as early as a few days after their concussion to honestly several years after. And I just wish that some of my patients that I worked with who had had symptoms for so long could have gotten some of this advice. The notes that I've gathered for myself that I'm preparing for this video, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, really. I'm standing on the shoulders of my patients that I've worked with who've shared their stories, who've gone through their healing journeys with me. I'm standing on the shoulders of the researchers who have been able to debunk previous thought and presenting what we currently know to be best practice. I'm standing on the shoulders of people that I've connected with online who've told me about their experiences. So these diary series would not be what they are without the help of all of these people who I've been able to collaborate with and take their knowledge and now hopefully spread it to others who might need it. So if you have sustained a concussion and you're feeling really stuck, you're feeling like nobody understands what you're going through, you want to figure out how you can move forward by doing things, one, at home on your own, and then two, you're open to seeing a healthcare provider if you only knew which kind you should look for and what you should be asking them, then this is the series for you. So this is very much a casual conversation about literally what I would do if I were in your shoes, just regular, normal person, just trying to get better and move on with life. I took some notes, so I'm just going to read from these, but really, this is just what I would really do, just off the cuff. Okay, so this part one is all about decompressing. Okay, so we're going to go through 4 actionable steps that I would take immediately if I had gotten a concussion. And some of these you're going to be a little surprised. So definitely stick around to that 4th one, especially. But so we are going to start with decompressing because when a concussion occurs, basically there is a neurometabolic cascade of events that leads to this energy crisis within the brain, and it's affecting the entire body when this happens. So you either directly get hit to the head or neck, and this causes the concussion because your brain basically kind of gets shaken up within the skull. So that impact of the brain moving back and forth within the skull causes the concussion. And so when you have this energy crisis, there is a lot of inflammation going on. So that is why it's necessary to decompress. Action item number 1, I would remove as many responsibilities off my plate as possible. So today I am a full-time worker. So the first thing I would do is take off work for an entire week. And if I was in school doing some sort of program, I would also take off from school. So whether I'm in school or work, taking a whole week off of that. Now, I know that this would be really challenging because you're thinking, okay, if you're in school, for example, wow, I'm going to have to catch up on all that work. And if you are a full-time worker or however many hours you work, there might be a financial component to this where you're going, okay, I can't just take off work because of the finances, or I can't take off work because there are not other workers who are going to replace me. It's going to be difficult for those people. I would tell myself this is the time that I have to think about putting myself first. I'm not going to be able to help out my coworkers. I'm not going to be able to continue being successful in my academic program if I don't take this week off, because me daily working or being in school is continuously draining my brain's battery, so to speak, that is already at low because of this concussion. So basically, if I continue to push, similarly to many patients that I've seen in the past, I'm going to end up paying for this by having more symptoms. They're going to be more intense and severe, and it's going to then make it longer for me to recover. So I'm now suffering even more than I need to, and I'm now taking longer. In the long run, I'm going to end up just crashing to the point where I have to stop working or I have to stop going to school, and then it's going to take me even longer to return. So way easier for me to just take off that first week. Now, of course, ideally, I would have enough savings in my bank account so that I could take off that week or even 2 weeks, because, what I would do is probably take off that first week. And then the second week, I would return to work on modified duty. So maybe I would have some half days. Maybe I would do every other day. And then same thing with school. Like I wouldn't go back. I wouldn't go from being off a full week to just jumping back in full time either. I would ensure that I had some accommodations so that I did not have to be there all day or again every other day, that my assignments, that I had more time to turn them in, things like that. So it would be this period where I'm probably nervous about not getting as much done as I'm used to, but knowing that this is just what's necessary for me to heal, and that I will eventually be able to catch back up with the schoolwork and even financially if I have to work some overtime, that I would just do that instead of trying to just continue being as productive as I normally am when my battery is nowhere near what it usually is because of the concussion. Now, at this time as well, I'm a parent. So being a mother is a big daily responsibility that I have as well. Now, depending on what age my children were at this time would determine how much I needed to basically delegate. So, for example, let's say that I have a newborn and I am maybe feeding, bottle feeding, breastfeeding, and I'm cuddling and welcoming this baby into the world. I would stick to the essentials and I would continue to do those things for the baby. But as far as putting the baby down to sleep, those things, I would try to see if somebody else could do it. So if it was another family member, if you have a partner, so my husband, I would see if he was able to do that, or if you have a babysitter, really relying on those people so that again, I can give my brain and body space to recharge and kind of or recover from this energy crisis. Now, if I had maybe older children, even a toddler, someone who is used to not always being with me, maybe they get to spend a week at their grandparents' house. And this again gives me time to focus on myself, because the more I can focus on myself in the beginning, the easier it'll be to recover. And I've seen this with my patients, my female patients that are mothers, that it is very challenging for them to take time for them. They're so used to giving for others and putting themselves second that it probably is no surprise that the people that I have seen who have those persistent post-concussive symptoms are mothers. Action 2, no sports or exercise, especially in those first couple of days. This would be so tough for me. I am such a lover of sports and exercise. I am exercising pretty much daily. So I know that this one would be so challenging for me. What I would have to lean into is the science. I would have to think about how right now, after the concussion, my brain is in an inflamed state and it is very stressed out as well. There's all these stress hormones that are active right now, and they're trying to work together to resolve this inflammation. And so, unfortunately, if I continue to do higher level movements, exercising in sports, I'm also triggering stress in my body. Now, normally exercise is considered a healthy stress on the body. But if the brain and body are already under a high level of stress, adding in an additional stress from exercise, even if it's intended to do good for me, is just going to make my symptoms worse, especially in those first 48 hours. Now, the other side to this is with sports, especially if these sports are contact sports, either with other people or with an object. So, say tennis, for example, there's not necessarily contact with another person, but there can be contact with you and the ball. So, we would want to discontinue sports for a couple of days at least, because we do not want to risk getting another concussion within those first 48 hours. What we know about getting concussed in the same 48 hours that you just had another concussion, there is a higher risk of developing what is called second impact syndrome. Basically, what happens is the new inflammation on top of the inflammation that you just incurred with that other concussion can become so great that it ends up being fatal. And this has definitely happened, that people have unfortunately died from sustaining more than one concussion within a very short period of time. And again, especially if this is an athlete, they already had a concussion from sports and now they're getting another concussion from sports. So it's just way easier to remove that risk by not engaging in sports for a couple of days. So, regardless of if you are a professional level player, this is similar to if you are a full-time worker that you take off work. If sports is your work, you also take off from work from sports. Now, this does not mean that for those first 48 hours that I would just be laying in bed. Now, the issue with laying in bed all day is that your body and brain actually become more sensitive because now it's not being exposed to anything at all. So I would actually keep moving, but it would be very light movements around the house. So let's say I'm getting up to go to the kitchen to go eat. I'm getting up to go to the bathroom different times throughout the day. I am getting up to go down the driveway to get my mail. So just little movements like that around the house. I would also probably do some stretching because I might be sore after this concussion. And so I would do a very gentle routine. And I have a morning routine on the channel that I will link in the notes. So just things like that that would get me moving. But again, nothing strenuous, nothing that's stressing my body because we are in decompress mode. Action number 3, I would limit screen time. Again, this is for the first 48 hours, but I would probably literally cut it to less than 10 minutes per day. I know this is going to be really hard for most of us because we live in such a digital world now. We're always on our phones, but I would cut this down. And this is based on a study that came out in 2019 that looked at people right after a concussion for the first 48 hours who were not on their screens at all versus people who had no screen limitations. And the people who had no screen time, so they were on their phones literally less than 10 minutes a day for 2 days, they ended up having a faster recovery than people who were on their screens without limitations. So they they improved by several days faster than the no screen limit group. Now, there's a few reasons why this is probably happening. One, again, our body is under this stress right now. And so our nervous system is in a heightened state. It is trying to heal. And when we are on screens, these are unrelated to concussion, but these stories, these studies that have been done at what happens to our body when we are reading from screens, a few things happen. We actually stop to breathe the way that we normally do when we're, say, just reading on paper. So our breathing pattern starts to change. It becomes more shallow. And that would also further heighten our nervous system. Our sympathetic drive would be activated even more. So by that happens by being on screens. Also, with the screens, this can also alter our circadian rhythm. It can kind of, especially at night when we're doing the nighttime scrolling, it can kind of interfere with our body signaling to our brain that it's time to go to sleep and start winding down. And so we definitely don't want our sleep to be affected after the concussion. We need that time for healing. So that can be an issue. So in general, I would limit the scrolling and just in general visual tasks. So I would probably focus more on things that involve auditory input. So probably listening to calming things like the radio. So just some chill talk radio or a podcast, audiobook, those kinds of things, just relaxing music. All right, number 4, and this one may not be so common, but I would lean into assistive devices. Now, what do I mean by assistive devices? It's going to depend on what my symptoms are. So, whatever I am feeling, if there is some sort of device or item that I can use to help soothe that symptom, I'm going to use it. And it doesn't matter if I'm at home or if I'm in public. For example, let's say right now I have a lot of noise sensitivity. So it's just normal noises are really bothering me. Maybe they're inducing a headache or it just really hurts. I'm going to use earplugs. So I'm not going to shy away from doing that. I am also going to set up my environment so that it is not as loud, just whatever I need to do for that. If it is too bright for me outdoors, I might put on some light blockers. If it is just my head is pounding and it's really soothing for me to use an ice roller on my face or to use some sort of ice pack, I'm going to do it. So I'm not going to try to shy away from those things and try to just bear with it and hope that it gets better if I just force myself through it. If I never was using a cane, but I feel really off balance and the cane is helping me from not falling over, guess what? I'm going to be that person that's using the cane. If I have nausea and I have to continuously pop a ginger chew every few hours, then that's what I'm going to do. So that is something that people actually get very embarrassed about, having to use these devices because it makes them stand out. It makes people note that there's something maybe not right with me in the moment. I don't care. I have to do this to get better. So let me do it rather than suffering in silence just so that I can play the part of looking normal just because everybody thinks that I am quote unquote normal, that I don't have anything going on with me at the moment. Okay, that was part 1 of my Concussion Recovery Diaries. If you are interested, you can download my 48-hour brain reset. This is a few pages and just goes through what I would avoid versus what I would lean into for 48 hours if this was just after getting a concussion or if this was me needing to reset because I was going through a flare up episode or some sort of setback. So you can download that for free and you can join my newsletter where I have all kinds of tips for concussion recovery. All right, that's it. Thanks for joining me. Leave me a comment just telling me which of these action steps that you would implement that you'd never heard before.